were cast down. The Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, the hair of his head pure as wool. His throne was like a fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. A fiery stream issued and came forth from him, and before him was thousands who were ministering unto him. We had that 100,000 back in, or 100 million, actually, and that would be 1,000, 100 million. We had that back, you remember, in chapter 5. And 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him, and judgment was set, and the books were open. And I beheld then, because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake, I beheld even until the beast was slain, and his body destroyed, and given to the burning fire. He is describing the final kingdom that will rule over the earth. You remember when Daniel was taken to Babylon and was being trained to be a counselor for Nebuchadnezzar, that Nebuchadnezzar had a dream that troubled him, and he called in his wise men, counselors, and he demanded that they tell him what his dream meant. And they said, well, what did you dream? He said, I can't remember. They said, well, how in the world can we tell you what it means if you can't remember what it was? And he said, look, I've been paying you guys for years to be smart, and if you can't tell me the dream and what it means, then you're fired. More than that, you'll be put to death. I've been wasting too much money on you. So they objected and said, only the gods can tell you what you dreamed. And so Nebuchadnezzar ordered, let the wise men be put to death. Well, Arioch, who was training Daniel to become one of the wise men, one of the counselors, came to Daniel and he said, you know, the king is upset because the wise men sort of mouthed off to him because he wanted them to tell him his dream and the interpretation of it, and he can't remember the dream. And Daniel said, go back and tell him that there is a God in heaven. He knows all things. He knows what he dreamed, and he can tell him what it meant. And so Arioch came into Nebuchadnezzar and said, I found a man from among the Jews, and he said he can tell you your dream and what it meant. Daniel, in turn, went to his buddies, and he said, guys, we have to have a prayer meeting, and we've got to find out from God what the king dreamed and what it meant. And so the Lord revealed to Daniel the dream and the interpretation. So he came into Nebuchadnezzar, and he was presented by Arioch unto Nebuchadnezzar, and he said, I understand you can tell my dream and the interpretation. And Daniel said, well, not quite that way. He said, I can't of myself do anything, but there's a God in heaven, the true God, and he has revealed to me what you dreamed and what it means. In your dream, you saw this huge image. It had a head of gold, it had a chest of silver, had a stomach of brass and legs of iron, and feet of iron and clay mixed together with 10 toes. And you watched in fascination this great image until there came a rock not cut with hands. It smote the image in the feet, and the whole image crumbled, and the rock grew into a mountain that covered the earth. And Nebuchadnezzar said, far out, that's what it was. What does it mean? And Daniel said, the Lord has showed to you the kingdoms that will rule over the earth. You, Nebuchadnezzar, are the head of gold, but your kingdom is going to be replaced by the Medo-Persian Empire, which in turn will be replaced by the Grecian Empire, the stomach of brass. And then he didn't identify the legs of iron, but of course from history we know that it was Rome. And we know that the final empire has not yet risen, it'll be of the European community related to the Roman Empire, because the feet of 10 toes are of iron and clay. But there will be 10 kings that will be ruling over this empire. And during this empire, Jesus, the rock not cut with hands, will come and establish God's kingdom upon the earth. So you see from the dream where we are, the time of the formation of the final world dominating empire, the European community. You say, well, how can they rise without, or with Russia being a threat and so forth? That'll all be taken care of in Ezekiel chapters 38 and 39. We're not going to go there tonight, but the Lord's going to take care of Russia as they will seek to invade Israel and will fall on the mountains of Israel and will be destroyed by God, which will give then the rise to the European community. And so these things can all transpire just in a hurry. And so the Lord sort of gives to Daniel a dream that is parallel to the vision or the dream of Nebuchadnezzar. Daniel sees it in a vision, and he is describing the same succession of governments, only uses them in a likeness of animals. And then, of course, this last animal that he sees has the 10 horns. It's fierce. It's awesome. And he describes that the fourth beast was dreadful, awesome, strong, exceedingly strong, and great iron teeth, and it broke in pieces and stamped the residue with the feet and so forth. And he considered the 10 horns of this beast, which would be coming out again of the Roman Empire, the 10 nations that will rule in the last days. And I beheld until these thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days, that is God, did sit, whose garment was white as snow, the hair of his head like pure wool, his throne like a fiery flame. We got that back in chapter 4, where John is taken into heaven. And the fiery stream that issues, and before him the 100 million, which again we got in chapter 5. And when Daniel wanted to know the truth about this fourth beast, who was diverse from the others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron and his nails of brass, who devoured and broke in pieces, and the 10 horns that were upon his head, and of the others which came up, before whom 3 fell. And of that horn it had eyes and a mouth that spoke very great things, whose look was more stout than its fellows. So out of these 10 nations that rule, there will arise one of the horns, one of the nations, and the ruler of that nation will be what is called in the scriptures the Antichrist. Other places he's called the beast, and he has different names within the scripture. And in verse 21 of Daniel 7, I beheld, in the same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them. The very fact that he makes war with the saints, they would not be the church. The church is already in heaven with the Lord. But he makes war with the saints and prevails against them. And the fact that he prevails against them would indicate that they are not the church. Jesus said, upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. And so the Antichrist prevails against these believers. We find them here in the 5th seal. He puts them to death for their resistance and refusal to worship him. And this Antichrist, it said, will confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, or the 7-year period that we have in Daniel chapter chapter 9, beginning with verse 27.